Well, it is a tremendous honor to be here, and you are the answer. You are important people. God has chosen you for such a time as this. No coach saves his worst players till the end of the game. I think out of all the world history, God, so instead of it being, oh, it looks bad, get us out of here quick. No, you're the star player. The coach saves the fastest runner for the last leg of the relay. You're the answer. Anyway, did a book called Silence Equals Consent, The Sin of Omission. At a wedding ceremony, if you're silent, you're giving consent to the wedding vows. It's called the rule of tacit admission, T-A-C-I-T. Well, if your silence gives consent to wedding vows, it gives consent to other things. And if church members are silent while they're killing babies, those church members are giving consent to killing babies. And so it's going to be a rude awakening for all those people that say, oh, we just preach the gospel, we don't get involved in politics. It's like, yeah, you're being silent. You're giving consent to all that. You're an accessory to the crime. Another book is called Socialism, The Real History from Plato to the Present. And the subtitle is How the Deep State Capitalizes on Crises to Consolidate Control. But I want to jump into my presentation. My website's AmericanMinute.com. And nationalism, we've heard of that term, right? Christian nationalism, that's the new boogeyman. Did you know that nationalism is the opposite of globalism? Did you know there are globalists who want a one world government? Like Klaus Schwab, who said, Agenda 2030 video, you'll own nothing and be happy. Own nothing, own nothing. It sort of sounds like Karl Marx, who said the theory of communism may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. Let's see, if you abolish private property, it means you'll own nothing. So globalists want world communism, which of course they will be at the top of. Now, did you know Brock Chisholm was the first director of the World Health Organization? Have you heard of the World Health Organization? Brock Chisholm said, to achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from minds of men their national patriotism. Globalists hate people that want to preserve their nations. So nationalism is the opposite of globalism. Nationalism depends on the nation. In socialist, communist, Islamist nations, there are no individual rights. Well, right? Nazi stands for National Socialist Workers' Party. And there were no individual rights. Ask the Jews. Well, guess what? In our country, we believe in individual rights from a creator, which is important because if the creator gives it, the government can't take it away. And what are these rights? Freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to defend your wife and kids, freedom to a speedy trial by a jury of your peers, freedom from cruel and unusual punishment. These are freedoms that are guaranteed to you. That's sort of a good thing, right? Wouldn't you agree? So nationalism is bad in countries where there are no individual rights. Our country, we want to preserve individual. We don't want dominionism, we want freedomism. You got to watch out for those Christians. If they get in power, they're going to force you to have freedom. They're going to force you to have freedom of choice and freedom of press and freedom of, right? And to top it all off, it's government from the consent of the governed. You get to be in charge. That's sort of a good thing. So where nationalism is bad in Islamist and in socialist and in communist countries, over here, preserving our nation is good because you get to be in charge and you have rights the government cannot take away. And Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, our fathers brought forth on this nation on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Christians want all men equal. And that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. That's sort of a good thing. We want to be in charge. Lastly, Christian nationalism used to be called Christian patriotism. I have a Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. The word nationalism is not in there. The word patriotism is love of one's country. And every leader encouraged it. Here's Washington. To the distinguished character of patriot, it should be our highest glory to laud the more distinguished character of Christian. Lincoln's Gettysburg, his inaugural address, intelligence, patriotism, Christianity, and a firm reliance on him are still competent to adjust in the best way all our present difficulty. Lincoln, who freed the slaves, mentions patriotism and Christianity right next to each other in his inaugural. And in the South, the Democrats started KKK, right? There's 13,000 pages of testimony that the Democrats were doing Jim Crow laws, black codes, and lynchings. And so Republican Ulysses S. Grant starts the Department of Justice and sends the federal troops to the South called Reconstruction to protect blacks against these lynchings. Tuskegee Institute did research. There's over 4,700 documented lynchings. Did you know 1,200 of those were white Republicans in the South registering to free blacks to vote, and they got lynched too? It's not a white-black issue. It's a Democrat-Republican issue. It's not a skin issue. It's a brain issue. It's not a hardware problem, it's a software problem, right? And so Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, has the first black man as an honored guest in the White House for dinner, Booker T. Washington. And Teddy Roosevelt says, the mob lynches a Negro. Every Christian patriot in America needs to lift up his voice in loud and eternal protest against this mob spirit. Christian patriots need to get loud against lynchings, against all kinds of evil in society. Franklin Roosevelt, he's fighting the National Socialist Workers' Party, Nazi. He's fighting Imperial Japan. He's wanting to preserve our nation, and he's giving out Gideon's New Testaments to the soldiers, millions of them. Blue ones to the Navy, brown ones to the Army. I have a copy. He writes the foreword. He says, as Commander-in-Chief, I take pleasure in commending the reading of the Bible to all who serve in the armed forces of the United States. FDR says, those forces hate democracy and Christianity as two phases of the same civilization. They oppose democracy because it's Christian. They oppose Christianity because it preaches democracy. FDR said, the whole world is divided between pagan brutality and the Christian ideal. We choose human freedom, which is the Christian ideal. I wonder if the mainstream media would call Franklin Roosevelt a Christian nationalist. He's preserving our nation. He's passing out New Testaments. And Eisenhower, he says, any group that awakens all of us is a dedicated, patriotic group that can well take the Bible in one hand, the flag in the other, march ahead. No problem with Bible, flag, right? And did you know that in 1965, 93% of Americans identified as Christian? 1965, 93%. That's 69% Protestant, 24% Catholic, 3% of America was Jewish. The country was predominantly Christian and almost all Judeo-Christian, Bible-believing. And so we were patriotic and a majority Christian. Nobody saw a problem with that. The left engages in something called psychological projection, right? They are blaming you for what they're doing. It's in the Bible. Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of lusting after her when she was lusting after him. Lo and behold, they're the ones that are setting up a nationalism. It is a woke nationalism. And they don't care about your rights. They don't care about your freedoms. They want to get you canceled. They want you to lose your job. I talked to somebody from Canada. They can't even talk about political things from a Bible point of view or they'll get arrested. And so, did you know the same globalists, remember we talked about globalists? The same globalists that are giving money to woke seminaries to teach Christians not to be involved in politics are giving money to LGBTQ activists to get them involved in politics. What a brilliant strategy. Give money to silence your opposition and motivate your supporters. Now, the default setting for human government is what? Lance referred to it. It's gangs. If we got rid of all the police, we'd have gangs. And gang leaders rule through fear. And a glorified gang leader we call a king or a pharaoh or a Caesar, Kaiser, Sultan, Tsar. It's a top-down form of government. It's where a president rules through mandates, right? And so the first biblical record of this is Nimrod, Tower of Babel. He was a gang leader. Josephus, the Jewish commentator, said Nimrod wanted to build the tower so high that if God destroyed the world again with a flood, he could survive on top. And so in a sense, Nimrod, he made everybody in town bake bricks and bring them. He wanted people to fear him and his government more than fear God. That's the big lesson out of Nimrod. He wanted people to fear the government rather than fearing God. Nimrod, in a sense, was the first attempt at a one-world government. Right? Most archaeologists and anthropologists say this civilization began in the Mesopotamia, Fertile Crescent. And so this was him wanting to control it. So in a sense, he was the first globalist. And God comes down, confuses the languages, and the people scatter into language groups that turn into nations. Lo and behold, nations were God's invention to postpone a one-world government. Take the population of the world, break them into subgroups, they'll start to cancel each other out. But every generation has somebody that wants to conquer other nations, and if left unchecked, they'd have been happy to conquer them all. Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, right? All these ones. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger because with the latest military advancements, kings can kill more people. And with the latest technological advancements, they can track more people. Did you know 2 BC, Augustus Caesar wanted a worldwide tracking system? It was called the census. If he could have had access to 5G and cell phones and facial recognition software, I bet he'd been tempted to use that. And so the weapons improve. Instead of, Cain killing Abel with a rock, they're killing with bronze weapon, iron weapon, failing spears, scimitar swords, composite bows. They keep getting bigger, and anybody that can plot on a graph sees that at some point it's going to max out on a global level. And Jesus says wheat and tares grow together till the harvest. And so one nation that stood out was ancient Israel around 1400 BC, came out of Egypt, and for 400 years there's no king. It's called the Hebrew Republic. It's a total anomaly in world history that we don't appreciate until you study world history. That here you have millions of people, no king, and it worked because every citizen was taught the law and personally accountable to God to follow the law. Right? So you're about to steal, nobody's around, you know you can get away with it, and then you think, God is watching me. He wants me to be fair. He's going to hold me accountable in the future. Maybe I should hesitate stealing. And he creates a little something in your head called a conscience. If everybody in the country believes this, you can maintain complete order with no police. So this is called the Hebrew Republic, pre-King Saul, and this is what the Puritans set up in New England. That's why they looked to, they taught Hebrew at Yale and Harvard. Now, when Israel stopped teaching the law, every man did what was right in their own eyes, turns into chaos. They all go to Samuel the prophet. They say, we want to be like the other countries. We want a king. And Samuel cries, and the Lord tells him, they didn't reject you, they rejected me. Why is this story important? Because the kings of Europe look to the Bible for their authority, but they look to the King Saul. And on part of the Bible, the divine right of kings, God chose me. I'm going to rule through fear as a glorified gang leader. The founders of America look to the pre-King Saul part of the Bible. This Hebrew Republic, millions of people, everybody taught the law, accountable to God to follow it. So King Saul is the divider between England and America. Why is this important? Because Romans 13, which says let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, Romans 13 is understood differently in a monarchy versus a republic. In a monarchy, subjects submit to the king. In a republic, the citizens are the king. The politicians are your servants. You tell them what to do, and if they're not doing it, you vote them out and put in somebody that will. And so if democracies and republics are attempts to take the power of a king and give it to the people, what if the king wants the power back? Is he just going to ask for it? Hi, I want to be a dictator and control your life. Give me. Or people say, okay, here's control of my life. It usually doesn't happen that way. So there's two methods in which the government can take the power back and get you to fear it rather than God. One is fear. If you can get a whole population into fear, they'll panic and trade freedom for security. And the second is free stuff. The government is so nice, it's giving out free stuff until you get hooked and dependent. And then to keep it coming, you're going to incrementally give up your freedom. You know, a drug dealer takes over a neighborhood two ways. He comes in with guns, gets people into fear, and they panic and submit to the mob and pay extortion protection money. Or the drug dealer is so nice, he's giving away free drugs until you get hooked. And then you want some more? You're going to give up your freedom and sell yourself into prostitution. It's like a hunter catches animals through guns or bait. Right? Guns is an outside, bait is an inside, right? You tempt them. Some scriptures, I was reading how to catch wild pigs in Texas. There's a lot of them. They just destroy a cornfield in a night. And so you put a post in the ground and you throw some corn out and the pigs come and eat the corn, ignore the post. Next day, there's 2 posts. Next day, 3 posts. And you start putting them in a little semicircle and you keep throwing the corn out until pretty soon there's just a little opening and the pigs come, squeeze through the opening, they're eating the corn, and you shut the gate and you caught yourself some wild pigs. So you entrap them through dependency. And so they want to do a global dependency. They want to destroy the currency so everybody goes to their government and says, oh, give me a CBDC so you can track me everywhere. And Scripture, fear of man bringeth a snare. Whenever you make a decision out of panic and fear, you're probably going to be snared and trapped. And the second is, but every man is drawn away of his own lust and enticed, right? That's the free stuff. Eve saw the apple. So how do we create an atmosphere of fear so a nation will panic and give up their freedoms? You have to sow discord. If there's no discord, everything's fine. So you have to sow this insecurity, this discord. And so Psalms 133, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Everybody say unity. And then Proverbs 6 things the Lord hates, the last is he that soweth discord. Everybody say discord. We have unity, we have discord. Imagine being in heaven and somebody sowing discord in heaven. Well, it happened. The devil. Did you know devil in Greek is diabolos, which means to divide, to sow discord. And he gets cast out with a third of the angels, but then he goes into the garden and sows discord, gets Adam to blame Eve. And then he sows discord and has Cain kill and Abel. And then the Hebrew Republic, remember I told you about that, this rare period of 400 years where there's no king. And you would have anybody could raise up. And so they have Gideon is raised up, and he helps defeat 100,000 Midianites. There is no country even thinking about invading Israel. There's peace. But Gideon has an illegitimate son named Abimelech who wants power. And so he goes to the town of Shechem, and he does critical race theory, identity, race politics. He sows discord. He says, is it better for you that all the sons of Gideon reign over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And so they go to the men say, we speak in the ears of the men of Shechem, their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. Well, they go to the temple of Baal-berith and they take money to hire rioters, right? Antifa, BLM type people, and they pay them. And it says, and they gave them 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and worthless persons which followed him to do what? Commit violence. And they went into his father's house at Ophrah and slew his brethren, and then the men of Shechem made Abimelech king. So you take a country completely at peace, no external enemies. On the inside, you sow discord, you sow division, and then it weakens the country, and you can usurp power. And now the Hebrew Republic would have ended here with Abimelech rather than a century later with King Saul, had not somebody threw a millstone over the wall and it killed Abimelech, so their republic lasted a little longer. Let's fast forward. Italy, 500 years ago, was a bunch of city-states. Venice, Genoa, Naples, Florence, Siena, and they fought. And Machiavelli thought if one prince could control all of Italy, it would stop the infighting. So he writes a book called The Prince, where he advocates the ends justifies the means. The end of one prince controlling all of Italy is such a good end, because it'll stop the infighting, that any means necessary to get there is justified. Lie, cheat, steal. So if a prince conquers a city, and the city does not want to be conquered, they would hate him. But if the prince pays criminals, like Abimelech did, vain and worthless persons, to smash windows, set things on fire, the people will panic and beg for somebody to come along and restore order. And so the prince will show up and get rid of the very criminals he bribed to create the mess. Nobody will know the better for it, and everyone will praise the prince as a hero. So it's good marketing. You create the need and fill it. You go around the back of the house and set it on fire, and then you go around the front of the house and sell them a fire extinguisher. And they'll pay anything for it and even thank you for being there. So it is called Machiavellianism, where you create or capitalize on crises to consolidate control, right? You sow this discord, get people into fear, and they panic and give up their freedoms. And this quote is you're a little more familiar with. Rahm Emanuel said, you don't ever want a crisis to go to waste. It is an opportunity to do important things you would otherwise avoid. So, Fox Primetime, Ben Domenech, Rahm Emanuel's famous dictum, never let a crisis go to waste. Normal times don't produce the outcomes that the authoritarian left wants, because people are not scared enough to give them the limitless power they crave. Crises are necessary. And so if there aren't any on offer, they manufacture them. And so you and I see a crisis. Our response is, how can we help people through it? They see a crisis. Their response is, how can we usurp power through it? Henry Louis Mencken wrote, the urge to save humanity is almost always only a false face for the urge to rule it. So we talked about the devil sowing diabolos, discord in heaven, sowing discord in the garden, Adam blaming Eve, Cain killing Abel. We've talked about Abimelech sowing discord in the Hebrew Republic, Machiavelli, right, the vain and worthless persons, right, that can sow the discord. And now the British Empire. It did become the biggest empire on the planet. The King of England was a globalist. He was a one world government guy with him at the top. He controlled India, a quarter of the world's population. Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, British Guyana, Canada, Barbados, Bermuda, countries in Africa from Egypt down to Sudan, all the way to South Africa, Canada, and America. And America's founders decided they didn't like this globalist king telling us what to do. Could you imagine that? Americans didn't like globalists. And the Americans broke away and flipped it, made the people the king. But how did the British Empire get so big? Did they just walk into a country and say, hi, we want to be the biggest empire in the world? Oh yeah, here are the keys. We're waiting for you. Is that how it happened? Let's look at how the British took over India. In 1714, they opened a trading post that turned into a trading fort that turned into them having guns. And they would give guns to one kingdom and give guns to another kingdom and then sow discord between the kingdoms. Stir up ancient animosities, and they would fight each other, bloody each other, weaken each other, and then the British would come in and take control of both of the weakened kingdoms. And they did this again and again and again until they took over all of India. And Uganda, there was all these different tribes. They'd come in and they'd see, they'd pit them against each other. In Nigeria, and they tried doing this in America during the Revolutionary War. The British would offer the Indians money for scalps. So after the French and Indian War, Americans and settlers were sort of getting along, but the British come in and go to the Indians. And so General Johnny Burgoyne lands in Canada, meets with the Mohawk Indians, and promises them money for scalps. And so they would go in front of the British Army and kill Americans and scalp them. It was so bad that it's one of the 27 reasons listed in the Declaration of why we were rebelling against this globalist king. It says, the king has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Then the War of 1812, the British control Pensacola, Florida. Just north is Fort Mims, Alabama, and the Red Stick Creek Indians. Do you know the French pronunciation of Red Stick? Baton Rouge, right? Baton Rouge. And so the British go to the Red Stick and promise them money for scalps. And so this is the historical marker. It says here, Creek Indian War, 1813, took place, most brutal massacre in American history. Indians took the fort with heavy loss, then killed all but about 36 of the some 550 in the fort. Creeks had been armed by British at Pensacola in this phase of the War of 1812. Do we really think the British Empire cared about the Red Stick Creek Indians? No, they were coming in, sowing division because they wanted to conquer the whole thing. And so let's look at Europe. Napoleon conquers, 6 million die. Afterwards, Prussia, a German kingdom, does not want to get conquered easy again. So the king, Frederick, wants to strengthen the state. And he gets a philosopher at the University of Berlin named Hegel, H-E-G-E-L. You know him because he influenced Darwin, and he had a student named Karl Marx, who was a member of the Young Hegelians. And so Hegel took what I just explained to you, the devil sowing discord in heaven, Abimelech sowing discord in the Hebrew Republic, Machiavelli sowing discord, the British Empire sowing discord. Hegel turned it into a nice, neat triangle. And one corner is a thesis, the opposite corner is an antithesis or antithesis, and the top corner is a synthesis. It sounds complicated, but it's not. So Karl Marx says the thesis is the status quo. It's the way things have been going for a long time. Everybody's used to it. You have to create discord. You have to create a problem. You have to get people to panic. And then they'll be willing to surrender some of their freedoms to the government in order to have order restored. And then that's the synthesis. They'll settle for an answer that's half as bad. And then that answer becomes the new thesis starting point. They create another problem that's real bad, and everybody panics in fear because of the discord, and they surrender some more of their freedoms to settle for an answer that's just half as bad. And then that's the new starting point. They create another problem that's real bad. Everybody panics in fear and surrenders some more of their problems for an answer that's just half as bad. And each time they surrender, they're giving a little of their individual freedom to the state. And so Karl Marx says, how do you create a problem that's real bad? You have to sow discord. You send in agitators, agent provocateurs, community organizers, labor organizers. Their job is to create discord and panic so people surrender their freedom for security. And so he called it critical theory. And so you go into a country and observe all the groups, economically, racially, religiously, and you call some victims and others oppressors. Haves and have-nots, you pit them against each other to sow this division. At first, it was the proletariat against the bourgeois, the working class against the business owners. And then it was the poor against the rich, or blacks against the whites, or the Catholics against the Protestants, or the Muslims against the Christians, or the Hutus against the Tutsis in the Congo and Rwanda. Did you know the people in the Congo and Rwanda saw themselves as one? But the Belgian and German colonizers came in and measured them and their features, and they would say, you're a Hutu and you're a Tutsi, and made them go down to the government offices and register as a Hutu or a Tutsi. And then they sowed division between the two, and they fought and even genocided each other, and when they were weakened, the colonizing power could come in and take control. They literally created artificial racial distinctions that had not been there before, simply for the goal of sowing this division. And so that's why when Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, said we are trained Marxists, they're like, oh, that's the Marxist strategy. Break people into groups, pit them against each other. Castro said the revolution needs the enemy. The revolutionary needs his antithesis, which is the counter-revolutionary. And if enemies were lacking, they had to be fabricated. So if everything's fine, you don't want to give up your freedoms. You need an enemy that you're scared of, that the government can rescue you from. And if there aren't any, you fabricate them, like a white Christian nationalist, those Christian supremacists, right? They want to create a boogeyman that's really not there, but they need to get you afraid so they have an excuse to seize power from people. So Jesus talked about this tactic. He says, if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Lincoln gave a speech, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It's like introducing an autoimmune disease into the body politic. What's an autoimmune disease? It's where your own immune system starts attacking your own organs and joints. You have inflammation. You have a war going on inside of your own body, and it weakens the body. And so this has taken the body politic and introducing this autoimmune disease, so the body's weaponized against itself, fights, and then weakens itself, and they can take over. So how do you destroy a marriage? Sow discord. How do you destroy a family? Sow discord. How do you destroy a church? Sow discord, right? How do you destroy a country? Sow discord, sow division. So the critical race theory is patriotism is the enemy, get people to identify with subgroups and pit them against each other. Now, during the Cold War, this is called color revolutions. So after World War II, you had new countries electing republics and leaders, Albania, Romania, the Czech Republic, you have India, and it's pretty hopeful until the KGB says, we don't want those countries becoming westernized. So they would go into a country and observe all the groups, ethnically, Bosnians, Croats, Serbs, religiously, Sunni, Shia, Orthodox, economically, racially, didn't matter. And they would call some victims and others oppressors, haves and have-nots, pit them against each other. And then they would stir it up to violence and bloodshed. Why bloodshed? Because then people think emotionally and not logically. I don't want to sit down and talk logic. My friend just got killed. And then you want to channel all this emotion through the media at the leader of the country that you want to get rid of. And so the media would be co-opted through bribes or threats to blame the new leader of this new republic for all of this discord. And when his popularity would begin to sink, they would do a coup or a rigged election and replace the leader with a Soviet puppet. Country after country after country was falling with these tactics. And so Truman does nothing because the United Nations he helped form, he thought would bring world peace. But the next president is Eisenhower, and he is faced with Iran having a leader named Mossadegh who's going to side with the Soviet Union. And so Eisenhower's Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, the airport's named after him, his brother Allen Dulles is the head of the CIA. He sends over Kermit Roosevelt Jr. to do Operation Ajax. And so Kermit Roosevelt Jr. is expert in foreign languages. He goes to Tehran, and he does the KGB thing in reverse. He recruits mobsters and gangsters and radical imams. And they stage protests and riots, and they attack mosques, and then they co-opt the media to blame Mossadegh for all the problems. And when he begins to sink in the public opinion polls, they did a coup, put him under house arrest, locked him away for the rest of his life where he dies, and they replaced him with the Shah, who loved America because we all put him in. And then the CIA did this again in Guatemala in 1954, the Congo, Dominican Republic, South Vietnam, Brazil, Chile. And guess what? The KGB did the same thing. And they had Castro and Brezhnev. Did you know the PLO was started by the KGB? For one purpose, to sow division in the Middle East. They don't want peace, they want division. And then they helped sow division in Cuba. And then the KGB helped start FARC in Colombia with Che Guevara. To do what? Sow division, take over. So an ELN in Bolivia. And they did this in Africa, hundreds of these coup attempts. And now FDR said in 1940, whoever seeks to set one nationality against another seeks to degrade all nationalities. Whoever seeks to set one race against another seeks to enslave all races. And then FDR said, remember the Nazi technique, pit race against race, religion against religion, prejudice against prejudice, divide and conquer. You know, Charles Barkley, NBA basketball player, was on a CBS Sports panel, April 3rd, 2021, and he said, man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. He goes on, we're so stupid following our politicians. Now, thank God for the good ones. We need the good ones to protect us from the bad ones. But he goes on, their only job is, hey, let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make the rich people and the poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe this in my heart. Now we're getting a little closer to home. Saul Alinsky. He rode around Chicago with Al Capone's hitman, Frank Nitti, and saw how all they had to do was go into a neighborhood, kill a few people, smash a few windows. The neighborhood would panic in fear and then surrender their freedom for security. They'd pay extortion money to the mob. And Saul Alinsky says, let's apply this to politics. Now, Hillary Clinton did her senior thesis at Wellesley College on Saul Alinsky. Nothing left but the fight. And there was a community organizer in Chicago that was working with the Alinsky group that got involved in politics and eventually became president. And Saul Alinsky says the first step in community organization is community disorganization. Disruption of the present organization is the first step. The organizer's first job is to create the issues or the problems. The organizer must first rub raw the resentments of the people of the community. An organizer must stir up dissatisfaction and discontent. Fan the latent hostilities of many of the people to the point of overt expression. The organizer polarizes the issue and helps lead his forces into conflict. He must search out controversy, for unless there is controversy, the people are not concerned enough to act. And in the front of his book, Rules for Radicals, he has an acknowledgement to Lucifer. Lest we forget, at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment, did it so effectively, he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. We started off talking about Lucifer, the devil, Diablo, sowing discord in heaven, sowing discord in the garden with Adam blaming Eve and Cain killing Abel, sowing discord with Abimelech during the Hebrew Republic, Machiavelli sowing discord so the people who want the prince to come in as the hero, the British Empire sowing discord, Hegel sowing discord. And Saul Alinsky did a Rolling Stone interview a couple months before his death, and he said, if there is an afterlife and I have anything to say about it, I will unreservedly choose to go to hell. Hell would be heaven for me. Once I get to hell, I'll start organizing the have-nots over there. They're my kind of people. I don't think that's what hell is. And so, do I still have your attention? Is this interesting? I don't know where else you're going to hear this. Now, they don't just want to sow discord. They want to blame you for it. It's called psychological projection. They blame you for what they're doing. And it's a narcissistic response mechanism where somebody who's caught doing something wrong instinctively blames the person that caught them. And so little kids do it. I didn't start the fight, you did. Cheating spouse will accuse the faithful spouse of being unfaithful. And we talked about Potiphar's wife accusing Joseph of lusting after her when she was lusting after him. Ahab meets Elijah and says, "Is that you, the troubler of Israel?" And Elijah says, "Excuse me, you're the one troubling Israel?" The Apostle Paul was in Jerusalem praying in the temple. The Pharisees see him and start a riot, and they're pulling Paul apart, and the Romans rescue Paul, and then he has to have a trial. And Tertullus says, Tertullus began to accuse Paul, saying, "We have found this man a pestilent fellow, a mover of sedition among the Jews, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes who's gone about to profane the temple." Then Paul answered, "They neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogue nor in the city, neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me." The Pharisees were the ones that stirred up the insurrection at the Capitol, but they wanted to blame this innocent Paul. And Nero set fire to Rome and blamed the Christians. And they even did it to Jesus. The Pharisees, right, their father's the devil, they accused Jesus of being demon-possessed. And Adam did it to God. Adam sinned. But he says, well, the woman you gave me the, he's blame shifting. He's trying to, and so it's gotten into politics. David Axelrod was an advisor to a previous president. And on NPR radio, April 19th, 2010, he said, in Chicago, there was an old tradition of throwing a brick through your own campaign office window and then calling a press conference to say you've been attacked. They're the ones that do the bad stuff, and they want to blame the innocent. And the innocent person has to back up and say, no, I didn't do it. And their name gets smeared in the media. And when it finally becomes clear that the guilty person did it, by that time, the water's muddied. The public doesn't know who to trust, and they get a pass. And so, when Hillary was Secretary of State, there was Uranium One, and a fifth of the U.S. uranium was transferred to Russia. And at the same time, she suspiciously got $145 million donated to her Clinton Foundation from Russian-affiliated donors. And pretty clear there was some collusion with Russia going on. What does she do? She pays for a Steele dossier to accuse her opponent of colluding with Russia. And when she finally gets caught, all she has to do is pay a $113,000 fine to the FEC for admitting that she produced the Steele dossier. And Trump had to go through all those years of impeachment. And, during the trial, the FBI, to do their investigation, was subpoenaing all of the evidence that could convict Hillary and destroying it. Hard drives, laptops, cell phones, delete, smash. And then there's a candidate who is extorting Ukraine on C-SPAN, saying, stop investigating my son, or I am going to hold back billions of dollars of U.S. aid. And you know what? By the end of the day, they got rid of him. He was extorting Ukraine. What did they do? They wanted to accuse Trump of extorting Ukraine. He had to go through another impeachment. And they knew Biden had classified documents in his garage illegally. He was vice president. He didn't have the presidential ability to do that. And they knew it was going to go public. And so what did they do? They staged a raid at Mar-a-Lago simply for the headlines. They knew the papers were there. They knew they were secure. They wanted the headlines, Trump, classified documents. And it spread all around the country. And when it finally comes out that Biden had classified documents and Pence had classified documents, by that time it was old news, and they get a pass. And so Charlie Hurt, Fox News, Hannity, May 23rd, 2019, said, this whole thing is like this game of projection. Whatever they accuse President Trump of doing, we then find out not only did President Trump not do it, but they did it. And so it gets ratcheted up to a military. Now, it's called a false flag. I spoke, it's a pirate term. I spoke in Beaufort, North Carolina. It was a big political event. They had congressmen, they had judges, all these people. And it was really pretty because it was at this venue with a glass wall, and you're looking out at the ocean and the waves coming in. It was like really pretty on the Outer Banks there in North Carolina. And the person driving me around was the head of the Blackbeard Museum. Blackbeard was a pirate. And he had a ship called the Queen Anne's Revenge. And he was downsizing, and so he intentionally sank his Queen Anne Revenge right off the coast there. And so this individual was telling me that pirates really didn't want to get into a fight, because if they got wounded, there are no pirate hospitals to go to. And so they did a psychological operation called a false flag. They would raise the flag of a friendly nation in distress and just sit and wait for a slow boat coming from Europe with all kinds of supplies and people, and they would look through their telescope, oh, look, there's a friendly nation in distress, and they would get closer and closer and closer till they got too close to get away. And the pirate ships were really fast, and so they would pull down the friendly nation in distress flag and put up the pirate flag. And all the people on the friendly boat are like, oh no. And they try to sail away, but they're too slow, and the pirate ship catches them, and Blackbeard was like 6'8", with a big mop of curly black hair and a big black beard, and he would take the wicks that you would light the cannon with, and he would light them on fire and stick them in his hair and in his beard, so he looked like this big smoking demon. And he would have his pistols, his dagger, and his teeth, and these pirates would jump on the ship, and they would get everybody to panic and fear. They'd be like, oh, just take my money, just leave me alone, right? And so it got into politics. And so you have Robespierre in France. He intentionally wanted the government to create terrorist attacks to get these royalist, Catholic, pro-king people to give up and join the new French secular republic. And he said, lead the people by terror. Basis of popular government during a revolution is terror. Terror is nothing more than swift, severe, and inflexible justice. Could you imagine the government, somebody in the government planning terrorist attacks on the people? And they chopped off 30,000 heads of political dissidents. And then there was a rural area called the Vendée, and they send the federal army out there, and they killed 300,000 royalist Catholics. It's called the first modern genocide. And another story of this tactic is the King of Sweden, named Gustav III. He wants to get his parliament to give him money to fight Russia. And parliament was hesitating. And so Gustav III got the tailor of the Royal Swedish Opera to sew Russian uniforms and have the Swedish soldiers put on the Russian uniforms and stage an attack at a Swedish outpost at Pumala. And so the news spreads across Sweden to Stockholm that the Russians had attacked, And when the parliament gets the news, they quickly approve the funding. It's like, that's pretty interesting. And the Nazis did this. It's called the Gleiwitz incident. Is this too much information for you? So it's called the Gleiwitz incident. And the Nazis wanted to invade Poland, but world public opinion would view them as the aggressor. So the Nazis had soldiers dress up as Polish soldiers and stage an attack at a German outpost called Gleiwitz, where there happened to be a radio tower. And the radio tower is giving play-by-play reports. The Polish are coming in, the Polish are shooting, the Polish are doing this, and it spreads across Germany and the world, and the Nazis say, well, they started it, and so they go in and invade Poland in 1939 and start World War II. And so you have the Soviets did this. Same year, 1939, they wanted to invade Finland, but world public opinion wouldn't have supported it, so the Soviets shelled one of their own Russian villages on the Finnish border and made it look like the Finns did it. And they used that as an excuse to invade Finland in the Winter War. And the Japanese did it. They were expansionistic. They got control of a part of China and built a railroad. And they claimed there was a railroad explosion in 1931 at Mukden. And so the Japanese invaded China and killed over 100,000 in Nanking, China. Later, there was an investigation. They walked the railroad, and there was no explosion. What, a missing spike or something? They fabricated an excuse to invade, to destroy, and the Turks did this. Now, after World War I, Turkey had a secular leader named Ataturk. He got rid of the fezzes and the burqas. He's the first one to educate women. He shaved and would wear Western clothes. And so he was having Turkey become more secular and to be united with Europe. But in 1955, there was a Turkish leader, Menderes, that wanted to go back to the Islamic Caliphate, be fundamental. And he was bothered by Greek Orthodox Christians in Istanbul. And so the plan was for a Turkish university student to go over to Greece and put a bomb in Ataturk's birthplace and blow it up, and a bomb in the Turkish consulate and blow it up. The bombs never went off. Yet the newspapers in Istanbul ran with the story anyway. And it stirs Istanbul to attack the Greek Orthodox Christian neighborhoods in 1955. And they destroyed the stores and the businesses and the homes and the churches. And they drove out the Greek Orthodox Christians. And interestingly, it appears Erdogan, the current leader, he got democratically elected. But he had a quote in The Economist: "Democracy is like a train," said Mr. Erdogan once. "You get off once you have reached your destination." So then he become more totalitarian, like a dictator. And so there's an anti-Erdogan movement. And it looks like he staged a coup against himself. I got an airplane, flew in a circle, landed, and says, "Oh, they were trying." And he used that as an excuse to round up all of his political enemies, to have some hearings, to have some trials, and have them zip-tied, taken away. And then he got rid of his political opposition. So this practice is seen all throughout history. 1934, Stalin is in charge, but there's a growing anti-Stalinist movement. And at the same time, Stalin has a supporter named Sergei Kirov, who is giving speeches praising Stalin. And so Stalin had an idea. He would assassinate his friend and supporter Sergei Kirov and eliminate a popular potential rival, and blame the assassination on the anti-Stalinists. And everybody would believe it because the anti-Stalinists didn't like Stalin, and they didn't like Sergei Kirov supporting Stalin. He was the party boss of Leningrad. So Stalin used this as an excuse to have some hearings, to investigate, to arrest people, detain people, and kill over 1 million people in the first Great Purge of 1936 to 38. And Germany, after World War I, was a republic, the Weimar Republic. And there was a party called the National Socialist Workers' Party, Nazi, and Hitler was the head of it. And there was an under-the-table arm to this socialist party called the Brown Shirts. They were nicknamed Sturmabteilung, which means stormtroopers. And they would storm into the meetings of Hitler's opponents and disrupt the meeting and cause these riots. And they would block arms and block access to buildings, right? They'd lock arms and could you imagine people locking arms and blocking access to buildings? And then they blocked streets. And then they went into the cities and they smashed windows and set on fire over 7,500 stores owned by Jews in the night of broken glass, Kristallnacht. And then, did I mention their capital got set on fire? They had an insurrection. Evidence points to Hitler's own people setting the fire. But in the confusion, Hitler accused his political opponents and had them round up and shot without a trial. And when the dust settled, Hitler didn't have any opponents left. And so I thought it was interesting that Tucker Carlson showed this video on TV of the very first people in the U.S. Capitol. And they come in a military way. One goes one way, one goes the other way, one goes the middle, and they're all dressed in black with tactical gear, and they seem to know what they're doing. And lo and behold, there really wasn't any group of people dressed in black with tactical gear at the Trump rally. It's like, where did they come from? I don't know if you saw the Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, asking Christopher Wray, and he says, I have reports that there were FBI agents in the Capitol before the rally dressed as Trump supporters. Is that true? And Christopher Wray said, well, we don't want to comment on ongoing investigations. He says, the answer should be no. And then it comes out there are a lot of FBI people in the crowd, and then lots of them, right? One of them, Ray Epps, and he's on video saying, we need to break into the Capitol. And he's texting, oh, I'm orchestrating this whole thing, and there's videos of him throwing stuff. And now we see it even gets bigger on a national level. And FBI. So I want to get to a quote. So we talked about the devil sowing discord in heaven, sowing discord in the garden, and Machiavelli sowing discord, and Abimelech sowing discord, and the British Empire sowing discord, and then Hegel, but here's Peter Thiel, founder of PayPal, and he gave a Stanford classical liberalism lecture, November 18th, 2022. He says the zeitgeist, or the attitude on the other side, is we are not going to make it for another century on this planet, therefore we need to embrace a one-world totalitarian state right now. He says, whatever the dangers are in the future, we need never underestimate the danger of a one-world totalitarian state. He says, 1 Thessalonians 5:3, he's quoting scripture, the political slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety. I want to suggest we would do well to be a little more scared of the Antichrist and a little less scared of Armageddon. In other words, don't be afraid of the world ending. Be afraid of the people that promise to save you from the world ending. And here's Simpson. It says, if you allow government to break the law during an emergency, they will create emergencies to break the law. You know, I read a lot of history. My book is Socialism from Plato to the Present. So Pericles was the leader of Athens, a democracy, 431 BC. And he's getting too much power. And so there is word of ostracizing him. That's where 6,000 citizens can vote to kick him out for 10 years, end his career. And instead of giving up the power, Pericles intentionally let relations with Sparta deteriorate into a war. It's like a NATO thing, right? And once there's a war, everybody wants a strong, the news headlines have changed. Instead of the news headlines, oh, we got to get rid of Pericles. Now it's, oh, we need a strong leader to protect us against, so it's the Peloponnesian War, right? So this was the pattern. Whenever a leader or a government that's in power becomes unpopular and the people want to get rid of him, the tyrant only has two tools in the toolbox, fraud and force. Fraud is they'll lie to you and take away your freedoms, and they'll do it as long as you let them. But then when you start not believing the fraud anymore, the only other tool is force. And they want to purge their military and Department of Justice and police of anybody that has morals and virtue. All they want is yes men to enforce. And so I just thought I'd come and give you a little encouragement today. You know, lift you up. And so you all feel good, right? Now, the globalist tactic is to get everybody in fear, and then you'll surrender your freedom globally. Economic crises, you know, healthcare crisis, food crisis. The Lord's response is what? Fear not, fear not, fear not. Perfect love casts out fear. When we realize that, we start the Our Father with what? Our Father who art in heaven. Now, he's talking about the heaven, but did you know that just the plain heaven with the stars, it's 93 billion light years across and still expanding at the speed of light. And the same God that's 93 millions holding those stars in their place is inside of you. He is all powerful. He just needs people to yield themselves to him so that he can use them. And you know, an observation, as more power concentrates into fewer hands globally, God's counterbalance is to get more people involved locally. Let me say that again. As more power concentrates into fewer hands globally, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, God's counterbalance is to get more people involved locally. You know, I'm convinced God wants to have an end-time revival, but it's not going to be through one or two big-name preachers. It's going to be through the body of Christ, being the body of Christ, not pushing dominionism, pushing freedomism. And anyway, lots of history. I'll share this real quick. So you had a king named Manasseh sacrificing children to Molech. The prophets come to him, say, God's fed up, it's over. So the prophets prophesied that it's over. Manasseh dies, his son dies, but he has a grandson named Josiah. 8 years old, becomes king. Teenager, he starts to seek the Lord. Early 20s, he tells him to clean out the temple that his granddad Manasseh had trashed, and they find the law of God. Josephus, the Jewish commentator, said that Manasseh had destroyed every copy of the law in addition to killing kids. And this was the original one Moses had wrapped in burlap, stored in a storage room with junk on top, and they pulled it out and they read it to the king. He had never heard it before. He rips his garments and repents. And he sends to a prophetess in town named Huldah, the wife of the king's tailor, to ask what's going to happen. And she tells the messengers, tell the man that sent you that judgment's coming, but not during his lifetime, because he repented when he heard the words of the Lord. And so for the rest of the 31-year reign of Josiah, there's peace and prosperity. It's this big, enormous Passover. Sends the Levites out to teach the law, tear down the Sodomite temples. There's this revival. And it was during that revival that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get saved, right, to use that term. Lots of history. Every generation has a crisis. Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, the bubonic plague, Spanish flu, right? And if we get through this crisis, there'll be another one. If we get through that crisis, there'll be another one. Jesus says wheat and tares grow together until the harvest. So it's almost like, why is there crises? The crises, whether we turn it around or not, the crisis is a chance for you to reveal what's in your heart. We're the bride of Christ. Every romance novel builds up to a decision-making moment. A forsaking of all others and choosing the one. And God is pushing the world to a decision-making moment. And, you're watching the movie like a chick flick, right? And there's a couple guys chasing the girl, and she got the big night, she's got her dress, and she's all dressed up, and the one guy says, I can't make it tonight, I got a business meeting. You'll understand, won't you? And she's like, and then this other guy will crawl across glass just to spend a few minutes with her. And she's like, okay, this crisis reveals to me who really loves me and who doesn't. I think God is pushing the world to a crisis moment to reveal who can stomach all that evil stuff and who says, I can't be silent anymore. I got to do something. It's good seeing you. So, freshman chemistry class, teacher has a beaker with a solution, pours in a catalyst that causes a reaction. Some stuff precipitates and settles to the bottom of the beaker. Other stuff gets effervescent and bubbly and floats to the top. So the time period we are living in is our solution in the beaker. The crisis of our time period is the catalyst that's poured in, and it causes a reaction. Some people run away and hide and drop out, deny their faith, even take the mark of the beast. How can I survive unless the government's my nanny? And other people, they get more effervescent. They pray for boldness. Like the early church, when they're persecuted, they say, okay, Lord, there's persecution. Grant us boldness. Historically, Christians have been the one to run to the need, right? During the bubonic plague, they're throwing bodies out in the street, and the election brothers, some Catholic men, gather the bodies, give them a Christian burial. If they're not dead yet, they would give hospice care, and then they would start recovering. And then you had Sisters of Charity starting hospitals across Europe. Did you know that Hawaii has a statue of Father Damien? Who's he? Whaling ships, European diseases, Hawaiians would get leprosy. They'd put them on an island called Molokai. And they would even, it's got a cliff, and then there's this little area where they put the lepers, and you couldn't get from one side of the island to the other. And when somebody got leprosy, they'd put him in a boat, and they wouldn't even dock the boat. They would just get close to the shore and shove the leper out because they didn't want to get close. Right? Father Damien goes over there and for decades ministers to the lepers, cares about them. He eventually dies. And so the Hawaiians love him, and they put his statue in Honolulu and his statue in the U.S. Capitol Statuary Hall. Christians were known to not stay away from me, stay away. No, they're ones to run to the need. They're the white blood cells. They jump in. And so we talked about in times of crises, people panic, and some surrender their power to the state and to the globalists. But it's also in times of crises that people turn to Christ. How many of you turn to Christ when everything was perfect? How many of you tend to turn to Christ and pray more when things are not perfect? Right? And then it's in times of crises that God raises up leaders. Someday you're going to be dead. That's a nice way to end a talk. So have a great day. But you're going to be in heaven because you believe that Jesus died on the cross to pay for all your sins. And when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing his praise than when we just begun, imagine you have been in heaven for 10,000 years. You're walking the streets of gold. You meet Moses. Maybe Moses will invite you over to his place. I don't know what it's like in heaven, but Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions. I bet Moses will have a pretty nice place. He'll probably have one of those big fireplaces where the logs don't burn up. Get it? The burning bush in the wilderness didn't burn up, and the logs in the fireplace. I heard one preacher say, in heaven, you will travel as fast as you think, and I'll probably show up late. My wife will say, where were you? I was thinking about something else. But imagine we all get there, and he's got a really big living room like this size, and after the small talk's over, he's sitting right in front of you. You tap him on the shoulder, say, Moses, tell us the story. And he's like, it looked really bad. The government was trying to kill us. We were totally unarmed. They were charging in with their chariots, and I just stood there with my staff, and I said, God, use me to deliver your people. And the waves came in and swallowed up Pharaoh's chariots. We're going to say, wow. Then we're going to look around the room and see David. Say, David, tell us your story. Room gets quiet. David stands up and he says, it looked bad. Goliath, this monster, was mocking our God, mocking our faith. These grown-ups were too chicken to do anything. I said, enough of that. Took my little sling, hit him in the head, took his own sword and chopped his head off. And we're going to hear Esther, whether I die, I die. I'm going to go and see the king. And we're going to see Gideon and Apostle Paul. It's going to be really exciting. And then everyone's going to look at you. And they're going to say, you, tell us your story. We haven't heard from you yet. What was going on down on earth when it was your turn to be down there? What were they saying about the baby that the Lord knew in the mother's womb, or sex that God made them at the beginning, male and female? What did you do when the whole world was against you, when the government was trying to kill? What did you do? And they're all sitting on the edge of their seats, all anxious. What are you going to say? You know, I'd hate for any of us to be up there and Jesus walk in the room and a big screen come down and him show all kinds of miracles, people coming to the Lord, and him saying, this is what I had planned for you to do down on earth, but you just didn't have enough faith and courage. And you look back at your life, and that mountain that held you back was this little anthill, little fear of man. What are people going to say about me? Are they going to print something bad about me in the newspaper? Are they going to post something bad about me on the internet? Are they going to try to cancel me? And you're going to say, I let that fear of man hold me back from doing all this great stuff. And you can't go back to earth and do anything else for Jesus because you're already in heaven, because you believe that Jesus died on the cross to pay for all your sins. But guess what? We're still on this earth. We still have breath in our lungs. We still have feet that trod the soil. You still can do those courageous, faith-filled things that you will be known for forever. This is your time. God bless you.
Stay here. Thank you, Bill Federer. Pleasure to see his people. You touched all of them. Bill, come here, come here. We have about 50,000 people in this arena. You don't see them because they're in cyberspace out there. Tell them about your resources. What have you got?
America's God and Country. It's 845 pages of God and Country quotes, and it's sold 500,000 copies. I've had the U.S. Supreme Court cite it in the City of Greece decision in 2013. Here's the book on socialism, the real history from Plato to the present. Subtitle is How the Deep State Capitalizes on Crises to Consolidate Control. Book, Silence Equals Consent, The Sin of Omission, Speak Now or Forever Lose Your Freedom. And my website, AmericanMinute.com, and I send out a history email that you can sign up for. So thank you so much.